This is the true story of Poon Lim, a Chinese sailor who survived at sea. He drifted in the middle of the vast ocean, with no rescue in sight, no land anywhere, and was on the edge of death. But somehow, he survived at sea for 133 days. On the 23rd of November 1942, the British merchant ship SS Ben Lomond was sailing through waters 750 nautical miles east of Suriname. The ship had been at sea for 13 days since leaving Cape Town, South Africa, carrying 55 crew members, and was heading west toward Paramaribo in Dutch Guiana. Poon Lim, a 24-year-old Chinese ordinary seaman, was in the crewmast bellow decks preparing lunch, and everything felt as calm as any other day at sea. A German U-boat, U-172, had already been tracking the ship. Out of nowhere, a deafening blast tore across the water. The first torpedo had struck the hull. Before Poon Lim could react, a second torpedo slammed into the ship. The force of the blast threw him to the floor, and he blacked out instantly. Moments later, a third torpedo hit, with even greater force. The two torpedoes had torn straight through the ship's hull, and in the corridors below deck, crew members scrambled in panic as smoke and seawater poured in everywhere. When Poon Lim came to, he fought his way down the corridor, but there was no one else in sight. Another explosion went off. His mind went blank, and before he could do anything, seawater came rushing into the compartment. The water dragged him straight into a violent whirlpool. His sandals were ripped off, his pants tangled around his legs, and the pressure crushed against his eardrums with searing pain. His lungs filled with seawater, burning like fire, and his head felt like it was about to split open. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, his life vest buoyed him up and pulled him back to the surface. Poon Lim looked around. The massive ship was already gone, swallowed by the sea. A few yards away, the German U-boat surfaced. He waved frantically for help, and the German sailors on deck waved back. But it wasn't a rescue, just a cruel taunt. The submarine soon took off, leaving him alone in the freezing Atlantic to die. He floated in the icy water for 2 full hours, until he spotted something floating in the distance. He swam toward it with everything he had left, and finally hauled himself onto a small emergency life raft, letting out a breath of relief. The raft was stocked with standard survival gear, a few tins of hardtack biscuits, some chocolate, flares, a flashlight, and a 10-gallon jug of fresh water. He rationed everything carefully, figuring the biscuits could last about a month if he was careful. Weeks crawled by, and still no ship appeared on the horizon. His supplies were running out faster than he'd planned, food and water dwindling, with no way out in the middle of the endless ocean, so all he could do was wait for a rescue that might never come. One night, he lit a flare, hoping it might reveal land somewhere in the distance. But once the light faded, all he saw was open ocean stretching in every direction. Week after week passed, and by the 3rd week, he was down to his last biscuit, food completely gone, with no idea when rescue might come. In that desperate moment, Poon Lim made a decision. He wouldn't eat that last biscuit. He'd use it as fish bait instead. He took apart the flashlight, pulled out the metal spring inside, and bent it into a crude fish hook. Rough, but usable. He baited the hook and waited quietly. Hours passed with nothing, and just as he was about to give up, a small fish finally took the bait, drawn in by the smell of the biscuit. But the hook was too small and too weak, so he could only catch tiny fish. He pulled a nail from the raft, filed and bent it into a bigger, sturdier hook, and used the small fish as bait to go after something larger. After a long wait, a big fish finally bit, and he fought with everything he had, eventually dragging it onto the raft, buying himself a temporary reprieve from starvation. Most of the time, he could only lie on the raft to save his strength. Seagulls would often land on the raft to rest, and one day, one landed right beside his hand. With no other choice, he caught it and ate it. With no way to make fire, he came up with a solution. He'd kill the bird, soak the meat in seawater to cut the smell, then lay it out on the deck to dry in the sun and turn it into jerky. But it was getting dark fast, so he'd have to wait until morning. While he was resting, a pack of sharks began circling the raft, and the danger was everywhere. Dehydrated and nearly collapsing from the sun, he came up with a bold idea, using the seagull meat as bait to catch a shark. Not long after he dropped the bait in the water, a shark took it. There was no way he could pull a shark on board by himself, So he used every ounce of strength he had left, hauling it halfway onto the raft, then beating it with a hard object until it stopped moving. He cut it open and drank straight from the liver for the fluid inside, surviving on that bit of moisture. During a short rest, he suddenly heard the sound of a ship in the distance, and at first thought he was imagining it. When he lay back down, the sound came through clearly again, and a cargo ship appeared on the horizon. Poon Lim shot up, waving his arms, shouting for help in English. But the ship was too far away, and the crew actually saw him, but mistook him for a Japanese soldier. So they turned the ship around and sailed off. A week later, a U.S. Navy patrol plane on a routine flight spotted something floating in the water, circled back to confirm it was Poon Lim, and dropped a marker buoy. The moment he saw that buoy, hope surged through him. He knew someone had finally found him, and that a rescue ship would be there soon. But the weather had other plans. A violent storm rolled in out of nowhere, and the wind and waves shoved the raft off course, away from where he'd been marked. Towering waves crashed into the raft over and over. He gripped the handles for dear life. The raft pitched wildly on the water. Water kept washing over the deck, and several times he nearly got thrown overboard into the deep. He managed to survive the storm, but by then he had nothing left, not even the strength to fish or catch a bird. Weeks without enough food or water had taken their toll. He lost nearly 20 pounds. His body kept growing weaker, and his mind kept slipping in and out of focus. During one brief moment of clarity, he noticed the color of the water had changed, a sign of coastal waters, which meant land might be close. He strained to look toward the horizon, but his body finally gave out, and he passed out. By then, he was just 9 nautical miles off the coast of northern Brazil, where a Brazilian fishing boat was working nearby, its crew mending nets and searching for fish. Someone spotted something unusual floating on the water in the distance, and as the boat pulled closer, they found a man lying on the raft, barely alive. At first, they thought he was already dead, but up close, they could see he was still breathing, just barely. The crew worked together to pull him aboard, saving the drifter's life. Once he'd recovered, everyone learned the truth. He had been drifting alone across the Atlantic for 133 days. Poon Lim's story isn't just a tale of survival at sea. It's a story of never giving up, even in the face of the worst odds. For 133 days, hunger, storms, sharks, and endless isolation wore him down. But the man on that tiny raft held on until help finally came. This legendary story of survival at sea, even today, remains one of the most astonishing true survival accounts in maritime history.